got an excellent summit in terms of content, in terms of interaction, in terms of representation of all stakeholders. We've got an excellent summit. And now we are going to enter the political talks, which is what wish recommendation from all the sessions that we had previously will capture the attention of the political leaders, the mayors, the ministers, and the development partners. And we'll have in 1 hour an interaction with the Chinese mayors, between Chinese mayors and the African mayors. And it seems promising in terms of conversation and dialogue. And after that, we'll go to the General Assembly of UCLGA, where we will elect our new leadership. So I'm very happy because the spirit, and you listen to all this discourse, speeches, emphasizing on the need to build the unity of this continent. If this continent has to play a role in the world, this is what the local Africa is here for. And we need to build an Africa of the people beyond the Africa of the states.
Fostering political dialogue took center stage on day 4 of the Africities summit. We heard from South African Minister of Cooperative and Traditional Affairs, Pravin Gordhan, who unpacked a forward-looking visionary outlook on African governance, highlighting vital points that political leaders need to keep in mind to ensure the transformation of Africa.
Africa, as you know, through the African Union, has adopted the Agenda 2063, subtitled The Africa We Want, which defines an African vision for the structural transformation of Africa based on the key elements of drastic reduction in poverty, inequality, and ensuring inclusive wealth and growth. The 2015 Sustainable Development Goals, the 21st Conference of the Parties, the COP, in Paris, and the upcoming United Nations Conference on Housing and Urban Development, commonly known as Habitat 3, will also in many ways give us a collective direction of the tasks that we need to accomplish on the African continent. We in South Africa have launched what we call Back to Basics campaign, a campaign that is premised on 5 pillars. The first is put people first, whether you're in national government or whether you're in local government. Listen to the people of our countries and respond to their needs. The second is ensure good governance and accountability within the laws that operate in our respective countries, and ensure integrity in governance as well. The third, invest in service delivery and the infrastructure that's necessary to serve our people and the economies of our country. Fourth, ensure sound financial management and accountability, because ultimately all of us spend public resources, not our own money. We must account for the way in which we spend our money. And fifth, build institutions at a local government level that can be sustained over many decades, not just for the generation that we have today. All of this is aimed at dealing with the challenges, as I said, of poverty, inequality, high unemployment that many of, if not most of our countries have, and the unbalanced growth that we have in many of our countries as well. They are further aligned to Agenda 2063, which aspires for cities and other human settlements to become, and I quote, hubs of cultural and economic activities with modernized infrastructure where people have access to all the basic necessities of life, including shelter, water, sanitation, energy, public transport, and ICT, end of quotation. Broadly, the development parameters have been set for us. The challenge, ladies and gentlemen, whether we are ministers or mayors or others that are operating in local government, and indeed our partners, is not about further policies, but how do we implement these policies and how do we implement processes of change and transformation. So I repeat, the time has come to transform local government in Africa. Thank you.
We've come a long way as a very young democratic country. We're 21 years into our democracy. We're 15 years into democratic local government, which means dismantling all of the apartheid structures, creating new local government structures. And we've done very well in providing basic services, water, sanitation, roads, etc., to our citizens. So that's the good work. Now another 15 years of hard work up to 2030 to achieve the goals in our National Development Plan, get better integrated planning, change the spatial character of our cities, better efficiency in our service delivery, better service to our citizens and listening to them carefully, as I described in our Back to Basics program. So there's always work to do, but we must be proud of what we've achieved and build on those achievements. Well, not all service delivery protests are service delivery related. Some of them are political, so that's the first thing. The second is, as we say in our Back to Basics campaign, municipalities, particularly councillors and officials, need to listen to their citizens, need to respond quickly when they complain, and make sure that they use the money wisely to deliver services. Secondly, we need to build up capability. So some of our bigger municipalities are good at what they do, some others are not. And that's an area that we've been focusing on in terms of competencies of our staff and so on. So those are some of the challenges that and we need to understand our people's needs so that we can respond to them.
If well-planned, led and governed, urbanization can be a tool for socio-economic transformation. Although Africa is the first continent to take a clear position on urbanization, the UN Habitat says the continent still struggles with it.
The form of urbanization is much more informal, much more chaotic, and much more, I would say, inappropriate for human decency and dignity to live in. As long as we have 61% of our populations in urban areas living in slums and slum-like conditions, then there is something wrong. Secondly, the pace of urbanization is actually much faster in the intermediate towns and cities than the capital cities, where there is hardly any planning for this urbanization. So I think that the first thing is we need to have leadership at national level and local government level focused on supporting a proactive planning process and a governance framework to enable that urbanization process to be planned well enough and lead to sustainable development. Is it achievable? Certainly, it is very achievable. It is even affordable because what it calls for, first of all, is the political will, and to get that political will and transform it into the right policies, in the right legal legislative framework. Number two is it has to be people-centered. There is an increasing level of inequalities between the extremely poor and the extremely rich. And that has to be really handled and adequately facilitated by those, especially in public office, to create a framework that allows the different actors to engage and allow for the inclusive, sustainable development that this continent can benefit from.
We also heard from financial institutions like the World Bank and the African Development Bank on the pace of urbanization in Africa. The reality is that Africa is ripe for economic transformation, but the question is, how does Africa transform at a faster rate, and how does Africa achieve the goal of decentralizing decision-making to expand its own potential?
You need to really have a clear separation of powers between the national, the state and local governments. Most of the time in many countries there's a total gridlock. So that represents a significant challenge that need to be addressed for decentralization and devolution of responsibilities to local governments. Capacity of municipalities just to do their work, is also a major challenge. Third challenge is financing. When you say financing, number one, you have the capacity of the municipalities to generate their own resources. Because if you want to go to the market or even to come to a development bank like ourselves to get a loan for development projects, you need to have the ability to repay, which means that you need to have some kind of credit worthiness. And unless you have your own ability to raise resources, whether it's your tax base, whether it's property taxes, whether it's sales taxes, etc. So municipalities need really to be able to mobilize their own resources so that they can be credit worthy, and they can go to the market and try to raise loans for their development. Most investors do not want to go into a country, put their money, and not be able to to get back their investment. So from a legal standpoint, you need to have a strong legal framework. Same thing for regulatory. You don't want to be going into a country investing in some particular let's say infrastructure, and then the government tells you you cannot charge this amount of money, you have to charge this, and basically that's going to be a loss for you. So from a regulatory perspective, there's also a lot to be done.
For more coverage on the Africities 2015 Summit, tune in daily to africities.tv.